A second NBA franchise in the spotlight for racist remarks. Earlier this summer, Hawks general manager Danny Ferry, on a conference call with management and ownership, read a scouting report about free agent Luol Deng using insensitive and racist remarks. Here's a portion of those remarks. Quote, "He has a little African in him. Not in a bad way, but he's a guy who would have a nice store out front but sell you counterfeit stuff out of the back." End quote. That prompted an internal investigation exposing an email from 2 years ago by co-owner Bruce Levinson, who also used insensitive racist remarks. Levinson has since said he will sell his controlling interests. Another co-owner, Michael Gearin, according to WSB-TV, is calling for Ferry's firing. Ferry issued this statement, quote, "In regards to the insensitive remarks that were used during our due diligence process, I was repeating comments that were gathered from numerous sources during background conversations and scouting about different players. I repeated those comments during a telephone conversation reviewing the draft and free agency process. Those words do not reflect my views or words that I would use to describe an individual, and I certainly regret it. I apologize to those I offended and to Luol, who I reached out to Monday morning." All right, gentlemen, how should the Hawks and or the NBA handle this situation?
Skip Bayless, the NBA should do absolutely nothing to Danny Ferry. The Atlanta Hawks should let him go. Danny Ferry shouldn't be gone as the general manager for the Atlanta Hawks for being a racist. He's not. Danny Ferry should be gone because after Levinson leaves, the rest of the owners don't necessarily want him. Now, I'm not speaking for all of them, but I've been up half the night, Skip, because I've spoken to about 15 different people, from owners in the league to GMs to coaches to players, both present and some former, all of whom know, are familiar with, or have a relationship with Danny Ferry. Here's the bottom line. Danny Ferry came to Atlanta on a mission not just to win basketball games, but to facilitate its transition in Atlanta by having a culture change, okay? You talk about black attendance, you talk about the 90% percentage occupancy of African Americans in the clubs, the crowd, 70% black, no black cheerleaders, all of this other stuff that's going on. People are looking at some of the culture changes that he was trying to make. They look at folks who happen to be black that were made uncomfortable or let go or what have you, friends of those individuals, bosses of those individuals, et cetera, along with some of the stuff that Danny Ainge said that has now been revealed. And they're looking at that. Danny Ferry, I'm sorry. Danny Ferry said that. And they're looking at it now to sort of to label him a racist. All right? Somebody that isn't too fond of black folks or anything like this. Skip, I know folks in San Antonio, they love San Antonio. They love Danny Ferry. Sure. Including Tim Duncan and those guys. Sure. Have no problem with them.
Well, he was on the staff.
I remember somebody said to me, LeBron James and his crew had a problem with Danny Ferry when they were in Cleveland. I called them last night. They said that emphatically that is not true. They have no problem with Danny Ferry. They don't know what the hell anybody's talking about. I called Billy King, my friend who I've known, who's the general manager in Brooklyn, used to be the general manager in Philadelphia.
Ice Bucket Challenge.
You understand what I'm saying? The Ice Bucket Challenge. I've known Billy King for, close to 15 years. Billy King asked me to quote him on this. He's known Danny Ferry since they were 15 years old. It's one of his best friends in the world.
Well, they
Danny
together.
Ferry both played at Duke. Danny Ferry was in his wedding. You understand? They're that tight.
All right.
I spoke to former players in Cleveland. They said, look, we've heard some people that were employees that said some stuff about him. We ain't had that problem with him. We don't know that. You may not like some of the decisions that he makes or whatever the case may be, but this stuff about him being a racist is wrong. So, based on the preponderance of evidence that I've accumulated, combined with my personal relationship with Danny Ferry, which is not, I don't know him that well, all right? We're not friends or anything like that. But I've always found him to be a very fair-minded individual, and I don't notice those problems. I'm not saying there are not a few people out there that have said that about him, but by and large, the black people that I know, who know him, played for him, worked with him, worked over him, etc., they said this is not true. So now we get to Atlanta. Why should he be gone? That's because Levinson, who has majority control, who has control of operations, has majority stake in ownership, he's the only guy that really wanted Danny Ferry and forced others to capitulate. And clearly with him being gone, people are looking at Danny Ferry and they're saying he needs to be gone. He read that email. According to my sources, Danny Ferry said, look, I messed up bad. I should have never read the scouting report. I should have never read the scouting report about Luol Deng when it's talking about he's an African and bringing in the storefront. The store looks good, but the back is a counterfeit shop and all of this other stuff. Sort of, you know, they felt that was highly racially insensitive. Danny Ferry acknowledges he was wrong to read that. And he was wrong to read off that scouting report. Where the discrepancy comes in is that there are those in Atlanta who are saying it's not a scouting report. It was him saying it on his own as opposed to him reading a scouting report. And that's where the discrepancy begins. In the end, what it comes down to is that if Levinson is gone, it appears that they don't want Danny either.
Okay.
So if you're not someplace where you want it, you signed a 6-year, $18 million deal. You got 4 years left at $12 million. Work out a buyout, be gone, because clearly you don't need to be working in the city of Atlanta where this stuff has been put out about you, because even though my sources, by and large, tell me it's incredibly and completely inaccurate in terms of the racist part, it is 54% black. You do have a strong African-American...
What's 54%?
The population, African-American population in the city. The fan base is largely African-American. And the African-American folks in Atlanta that I know, all they need to do is hear something like this to turn against you. And I don't know how Danny can come back from that. But let's be clear. He should go because he's not wanted there once Levinson leaves. He shouldn't be gone because he's a racist, because factually speaking, that's incorrect from what we all know. And it's a shame that his reputation has taken this kind of hit. No matter how you feel about Danny Ferry, I can't say he deserves what's happening to him.
So I think you're heading toward he will get another job in this league.
I think that he should. If he loses his job, I mean, listen, Atlanta made the playoffs last year. Budenholzer has shown he can coach. You know, clearly some of the moves that he's made on a personnel level didn't ingratiate himself with some folks in Atlanta, some folks who are well-connected in Atlanta, and that may be where Danny Ferry made his mistake, because Levinson didn't just hire him to be in control of basketball operations, but he included him in everything, all that stuff about the merchandising sales, the attendance, all of that stuff that Danny Ferry should have had nothing to do with, because he's there for basketball operations. So by assisting Levinson in his thought process and making these decisions, they're going to connect two pieces apart, and as a result, they're going to want Danny Ferry out there too. You don't need to be in Atlanta. But it doesn't mean you don't deserve to be a general manager somewhere else.
A couple of quick ironies I see. Number one, Danny Ferry played at Duke. Luol Deng played at Duke, just for the record. People I know around the league have always, to me, characterized Luol Deng as an extremely hard worker and a good guy who did just last year win the J. Walter Kennedy Citizenship Award. Just for the record.
Yes.
Okay. Now, back to walk me through how this happened. Danny Ferry, as the GM, is on a conference call with a whole bunch of owners.
June 6th.
Okay. And he's on this conference call because they have so many minority owners, meaning a whole lot of owners, where other situations...
4 different offices in 3 different cities.
That's what I'm saying.
New York, Atlanta, and D.C.
Okay, this is crazy because most cities, let's take the San Antonio Spurs, you don't need a conference call because there's just one guy who owns the basketball team, right? And so, yeah, and half the time he's like, hey, you guys, you just do what you're going to do with the basketball. He doesn't need to be kept completely up to date about who you might or might not draft. But in this case, all the minority owners, everybody in the conference call wants to hear, which way are you leaning? What are you thinking? So he's going through, and he's reading off the scouting report. Am I right? And it was...
That's what he says.
That's what he says. Was it constructed by someone? I'm reading in USA Today this morning, said that it was somebody outside the organization. Is that right?
Yes, it was another team that gave a scouting report on Luol Deng. Danny Ferry, according to my sources, is saying that the NBA league office knows for a fact that he indeed was quoting a scout, even though there's no proof that that is correct. I haven't spoken to the NBA office this morning.
The scout was not employed by the Atlanta Hawks?
No, it was
like an independent
somebody else report? Because remember, Luol Deng was a free agent and the Atlanta Hawks were considering him.
Okay, so if that's true, then how guilty should Danny Ferry be for simply reading it over the conference call? He didn't read it publicly, he read it to his owners. Okay, I'm just trying to get this straight.
I agree.
What do you think?
Well, listen, I'm saying Danny Ferry is on the record acknowledging that he made a mistake, that he shouldn't have read something so incendiary.
Yep.
All right? But is that a fireable offense to read something that somebody else wrote? I can't say that. I can't say that.
If we're going to take to the bank that it was something somebody else...
If we're going to say
okay,
take to the bank that it's something somebody else wrote and not something he was saying off of his own tongue.
Okay, then I'm with you on the conclusion. Just because of his association with that comment, which is very incendiary.
Yep.
It's completely...
Towards Luau Dane?
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah. Or in the city of Atlanta, as
That's
you point out.
That's right.
A lot of black folks are going to say, hey,
yeah,
that's enough. Like that, game over on that one,
and
right?
That's exactly why I'm saying that Danny Ferry needs to go. He needs to go because the city of Atlanta, based on this shrapnel of criticism and the momentum that this story has built, they're not going to let that go in Atlanta as it pertains to him. But I think it's important to recognize that some of this may be incredibly unfair to Danny Ferry, because it's one thing for us to sit here and say, you know something, you can't read that email, that's a problem. You got other members in your ownership group sending letters to Levinson saying that, you know, we need to investigate this. And then I heard that Levinson, along with the general counsel, went to Danny Ferry and gave him a heads up that an investigation was forthcoming. So it's a whole bunch of stuff that's being thrown out there. Well, I don't know what's accurate, what's inaccurate. I know what's being said. In the end, what we do know is that you don't have any preponderance of evidence that shows that Danny Ferry is a racist.
Okay.
And if that is the case, what has been put out there about him borders on cruelty, to be quite honest with you. But that doesn't mean he should keep his job, because he made a mistake, and that's alienated some folks in Atlanta. And you may need to move on.
I'm with you on that. But I do find it significant that Adam Silver, very sensitive to these issues,
yes, he is,
says he will take no action in this case.
Well, I find that very significant as well, because Adam Silver obviously is conscientious. We're very proud of him as the commissioner thus far. And if there was an action that needed to be taken, I'm sure that he would take it. But in the end, what it comes down to is that Levinson is gone. That was Danny Ferry's man.
There you go.
Therefore, if your man is gone, you need to go with them and get a job somewhere else where you don't have to worry about this kind of stuff.
Distance yourself from Atlanta.
That's what he needs to do. He doesn't deserve to be fired because of the job that he's done with the Atlanta.